please make sure you vocalize your questions. Please remember, y'all, if you've got questions, someone else has the same question, and let's do everyone a solid and ask those questions so that everyone can hear them. So as long as you're dealing with an ellipse that is on an object that does not have anything like a handle, it can nearly always be drawn in 1-point perspective. So that's what we're going to work with today. Okay. And then at the end of class, we're going to cover 2-point perspective a little bit and start that process. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place my vanishing point and horizon line. I actually want them kind of high up. I'm going to put them up here. And I'm going to lock it into place. We've done that a bunch. It should seem very normal now. It should make a lot of sense. Okay, so then what we're going to do different types of elliptical forms. We're going to start with just a cylinder facing us. So we just need, because it's facing us, we just need that square in the front. Okay, let me turn off my mail so it doesn't bother us. Okay. So now I've got my square. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on my perspective tool and I'm going to go ahead and drag my orthogonals back there to the vanishing point. How do we know it's 1-point perspective? Because we have a flat plane that's directly facing us. That tells us that's a 1-point perspective. Okay, so get yourself to that moment. And what we're going to do is we are going to decide on the length of our rectangle here. We're going to pull that line down there. And we're just going to build the back space. There used to be a club here in Orlando called Backspace, and my friend booked all the bands. He always wanted to be in music. He's now the manager of Paramore, which, you know, that the band Paramore. So I love that his story, because he wanted to be a musician and it didn't work out, but he stayed with music and now he manages some really big bands, Paramore and Against Me. Those are 2 of the bands that he manages. I think that's really cool. Okay, so now that we've found our 2 boxes, we're going to dissect our space. Boop. Just going to use another color. I'm going to dissect corner to corner. We've done this a bunch. It should feel very natural to you now. And that's going to help us find the center of our space. And then we're going to do the old Union Jack with our vertical line. Horizontal line. So the cross in the Union Jack, for the British flag, the cross is England and the diagonal lines are Scotland. That's where that comes from. All right, and so then we're going to put a Union Jack in the back there. You see, like that, right? And then like this. Okay. Everyone with me? Yeah. All right, so next bit's new. On the app, we're going to use the circle tool. On the app, you're going to place it at the top of the corner of your square and pull down. On the desktop, you're going to place it in the center of your square and pull up and out. And one of the things that I want you to notice is how, I was a little bit off there, I think, is how it doesn't come to a point. I have to do that again. I was a little bit off there. Okay, so a lot of times when students draw circles, I have a project in my design class where you have to draw something like, I mean, I think in the end it's something huge, right? Like something like 60 circles in squares.
Closer to over 100.
Yeah, I thought you had done that one. Yeah, it was about, I was just trying to be nice. Yeah, it's about 100 squares. Um, and the big trick is that you don't want the circle to come to a point. If the circle comes to a point, then it's not a circle in a square, it's a curved diamond. Okay. And so what's important here is you're going to find that the circle now comes in contact with the square. And it's not, you know, if we really zoomed all the way in, it probably wouldn't be that much of it's contacted to the square. But we have a visual reference here that there's contact between the circle and the square. Okay, and so then what I'm going to do is where those flat parts contact, I'm actually going to draw straight lines. Was that Daria that said that?
No, it was Ellie.
Oh, Ellie, yeah. And then here. So this is familiar to you, which is good. So then that comes through there. So you see we've created like a patchwork now, right, of like this cross. And in the middle, it makes this nice little like mini Union Jack, okay? And so what we've done is we've created a vertical and horizontal axis, which is measurable. And so if you could imagine like a slinky, you know, and you pull that slinky apart, and you know the circles, if you did it in such a way that you could always keep it even, the circles would pull apart and it would all line up. And then say you took that slinky and you pulled it all apart so it was all lined up in a perfect sort of shape, and then you got down on the floor and you looked through it, you'd see all the way through it, right? And so this enables us to kind of see all the way through this. And so what we're going to do is we're going to come up through here now, and we're going to do the same thing back here. We're going to make our circle back there. I change the colors, I find it easier to track. So I'm just going to put that in there. Just try to get it into the right place. And that's not very good. So if you hit something like that, and not entirely sure what I've done wrong there, but it's not quite right, right? Then what I can do is I can click on this, and I can click on this, I think. No, not that one. Sorry, I think I have to go in here. Maybe it's this one here. I think that's actually a little easier on the. Yeah, it's going to change all of that. I should have done the circle on a different layer. That would have been easier. Okay, so I'm just going to try again. I know we did it the other day that we just adjusted the circle. There we go. That's a bit better. All right. Whew. I was sweating there for a sec. All right, then down through here. Down through there. Flat there. Flat there. Okay. So then if we zoom out of that, now we can see that we can make that square, the vertical horizontal axis here match up to that one back there. So I'm actually just going to make a new layer. And then what I'm going to do is I've got my 1-point perspective tool turned on. I'm going to change colors. Okay. And so logically, we know that that's going to go to the back there. That's going to go to the back there. Okay. This is going to go to the back there. This is going to go to the back there. Okay. Then we've got other stuff in here that will also connect, you know, like we could find the central axis. You see? And then here we're going to go back there. Back there, yeah. And then back there, and you see, oh, it's going to line up there, but that's okay. And back there. That lines up there. That's where things get confusing, right? Where these orthogonals match those orthogonals perfectly.
Is it supposed to do that?
Yeah, it's just because that's where they are in orientation to one another.
Because mine didn't.
Then you might have a slightly different orientation, which is probably less confusing.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just that this lined up there. And that's because when I made my square, it's the location of the original square which created the original orthogonals, which created the original backspace. Okay.
Cool.
And it's the orientation between that front space and the backspace based on its relationship to the vanishing point that, in my case, is lining them up. But they don't, but you know, if this cylinder was on the opposite side, for instance, they would go the different direction. They may not line up at all. So it just depends on the location of the vanishing point and the horizon line and where your cube was.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so now we have basically a lot of lines. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to make more lines, of course, right? So I think what's going to be easiest for me actually, now that I just went through all that, is I'm actually going to merge that below. I'm going to make a new layer. I'm going to take this layer and I'm going to reduce its opacity so it's not quite so visible. Okay, because I find it gets really confusing, right? So we have a situation here where we're going to make an opaque cylinder. And so because it's opaque, we're only going to see certain portions of that cylinder. Other portions will be hidden. So what we want to do is let's go ahead and let's go to our circle tool again. And you need to make sure you have a new layer because we're going to do a fill-in. And you know, one of the things I think was happening with some of the fill-ins, y'all, was that like sometimes we forget that we need to be on the layer with the lines before we start to fill in. And then I'm going to show you another trick that I discovered the other day for the fill-in that I think could be quite helpful too, if your lines kept filling in. So I'm going to pull the same circle that I have. I'm just going to try to get the same exact circle as close as I possibly can. If I can't line it up, that means I pulled it from a different place, right? And so I need to go back and I need to try again. So let's see. I want it to be pretty similar, as close as I can make it. That looks pretty good. Okay, not perfect, but it will be pretty good. Okay. So I have this layer. This is one of the things where some people were saying like it's still filling in no matter what I do. So I think what's happening is this. First of all, the layer is on 100% opacity. So that's good. If I decrease the opacity, what you have to think about is what's happening there is that there's more white light. And the light, the reason you see the light is because in this case, it's white light. And so think about it this way, the more white there is in the layer, because there's less opacity, that means that the color the solid, let's say, let me phrase this. The lower the opacity, so the more opaque the layer, the more white there is in the color. This is what I think is happening. And so when you do the paint bucket, and when I click on the paint bucket, you can see that the tolerance is set at 120. So that means that maybe what's going to happen is if I click on that circle, it might fill in more space because there's more white in the red line. So I'm going to drag that down. I'm going to put the tolerance all the way down. Let's just go all the way down to 1. And then fill that space in, you see? And now it's complete. It didn't fill outside of that space. And that's what I suspect is happening. And if that's not what's happening, I don't care, because that's what I think is happening. Okay, you might have a different theory, but I think that's what's happening. And I do care, but I don't care. You know what I mean? I've just found that that works, and that's what I'm going to teach you. Okay. All right, so now look what happens when we pull in that opaque circle. Everything to the left is blocked. Okay, so we're not going to draw it on this first one. We're going to draw it on the next one, but we're not going to draw it on this first one. So now what I want us to do is I'm going to make a new layer. Okay. And what we're going to do is on that new layer, we're not going to fill in anything yet. Okay. The first thing that we need to do is we're going to go ahead and put in our back circle on the new layer. Now, again, we don't need all of it, but that's okay. And I'm going to make my life so much easier. I'm going to make another layer. And that means later on, I can erase that back edge of the circle I don't need, and I don't have to worry about accidentally erasing something I do need. So that's what's nice about having on its own layer. I'm going to turn on my perspective guide. And now I want to do, I know for sure I need this line here, because that's going to be visible there. And you know, if you zoom in so you can see things, then you can probably really get things to the point where they line up. And you don't need to go all the way to the vanishing point, which is kind of nice. You just need to go to the end. And then let's go ahead and take that line. You know, circles like that, they have a flat top. We could also go down the middle too, but we're not going to. Okay, we know that we need this line here. Okay, and we're going to need this line there. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Okay. Now I want you to pay attention to this because we're gonna have to do this by hand in a little bit. Can you see back here that if you were to imagine, right, that like in here you don't have to do this, I just want you to watch. There's a diagonal line between the top middle and the side middle. You can see that the circle, sorry, a little bit of a brain moment there, that the circle is basically cutting through about halfway of that space. Do you see? I want you to remember that because we're going to need that in a little bit when we build this by hand. So that's a good visual thing to see right there. Go back to my 1-point tool. Okay. Now, this is a point right here. I'm going to pull it right from here where the circle intersects with that diagonal axis. I'm going to pull it all the way to there. So basically what you're doing is like, if you've ever had to make a cylinder from like foam core, those of you in interior design or construction or whatever, or like, you know, you want to make a cylinder from flat piece of cardboard. Here you can go along and you can measure inch intervals and score the material, not all the way through, but just score it. And then you can bend it. Well, that's kind of what we're doing. We're kind of bending space. So what we need to do here is about here is usually the widest part of the circle that we will see. And so you need to find the edge that is the widest part and then just go ahead and draw that back. I'm not going to see any of that bottom edge. It's going to be covered by the front circle. Okay. And so now I'm going to turn that off for a sec. I can see now kind of what I have. And what I want to do is I want to say, okay, like that looks like a pretty good thickness of a plane right there. So I'm going to continue to divide the space into planes of about that thickness. I don't know how many we're going to end up with yet. But it doesn't matter. Again, here you're developing, excuse me, you're developing your visual perception, and the planes could actually get wider as they go towards the top. Now over here, we need to make sure that we have also identified the widest part that we can visually see. So put your cursor there and sort of pull it along and pay attention to those lines. Do you see the orthogonal lines? So I can see now that the orthogonal line to the right, which is the part of my cursor that, you know, watch, if I move it up, it's going to change a little bit for the other side. But that line towards the orthogonal to the vanishing point, that I'm going to pull that down. I'm going to touch it to that surface. And when I pull it down through here, you can see how deep inside the circle it goes, right? And I'm going to pull, I need to pull an orthogonal from the widest part that I can see, and boom, there it is. How do I know that's where it is? Because that's where I can now see the orthogonal line lining up. I'll do it right eventually. There we go. So it's very similar to the first orthogonal that I did, but it's just a little bit deeper. Now, I think personally, I'm going to get rid of this orthogonal now. And I actually kind of like doing this, which is I put the eraser quite low. And then I can actually just drag, I can line the eraser up then with the orthogonal, and I can just drag along, whoop, blimey. I could just drag along the orthogonal then. You see? Then it kind of disappears. And I'm just then letting the perspective tool help me to remove just that line. I don't want it. Goodbye. Way easier on the desktop than on the app, I must admit. I'm going to turn on the back circle. Make sure my perspective tool is off. Increase the size of my eraser so it doesn't take me years. Make sure I'm on the circle. And then I'm just going to erase that because I don't need it. And I'm just going to erase it up to the point where I need the orthogonal to be the outside edge. Aha, and then we can go over here and say, Well, Vaughn, that doesn't look quite right, does it? And I say, no, it doesn't look quite right. Sorry, I don't know if my commentary helps keep you awake or not, but this is me, and you have to just deal with it. So I'm gonna erase that. Sometimes I feel like it's like having Ricky Gervais as a teacher. If Ricky Gervais was a beautiful woman, of course. Okay, let's go with the Eddie Izzard because he's funny, she's funny, they're funny. Like not very consistent in how they identify, which I think is really interesting and quite fantastic, honestly. All right, we're just call Eddie Izzard she. That's what we're going to do for now. Now I can see here it's gone in a bit funny. Not super happy about that. And so that's probably something I've done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, well, that looks better there. Let me bring a line through here that makes more sense. That makes more sense. But of course, I should be using a line tool, not an eraser. So that looks a bit better. Could maybe even be higher. Yeah, that looks better there. Just being picky, y'all. I cleaned that up a bit. Don't want to erase the whole line though, because I do need that line there. And this should be gone too. Okay, so I can now take this and I can merge that down with that. And now I'm going to merge this down with that. And so now we have this. Okay, so the recording's going again. So the only thing now that I haven't combined into one layer is this. Okay. Now what I want to do before I do the next step is I just want to get in here real close. And I want to make sure, you know, the reality is that probably if I fill in this, oh, no, it is going to get, that boundary is going to hold up. So that's good. What I want to do is just go along the edge. And so like here I have a hole. Let's just make sure that we fill in all that type of stuff. Okay. Because we need to be able to fill in these planes because the planes are where we're going to put the light. So we just want to make sure that we don't find ourselves, you know, struggling to fill something in because we have not made the right connections. That all looks good. This back here needs a bit more. Boop, boop, boop. And maybe I'll go in and just erase that little thing there. Oh, I'll have to fill that in again. Oh, I tell you. There we go. Okay. So make sure you got good connections. Okay. Now, we've done a little bit of work, I think, with light logic. Okay, so light logic is basically the way that light logically bends around a form. This is a circular form. Okay, so light is actually going to go like, it will come over here in our drawing. But then, so that means this area over here will be darker. But then because light bends, light will also come around here and kind of hit the surface and bounce onto here. Okay, so where it bounces up, we call that reflected light. Okay, and light can also be coming over here and passing the object in totality, which means it's going to bounce there. Okay, so light moves around objects, especially circular ones, hence, you know, the dawn and dusk on the earth, sunrise, sunset, right? So here we go. So what we're going to do is I'm going to use the paint bucket tool. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go over here and I'm going to click my color editor open. I don't want to just use the puck. I want the actual color editor here. And then we're going to move the slider into the center here. So let's go 50 here and let's go 50 there. So it's basically right in the center. And then the number 8, that's the number assigned to the color on the outside wheel. Okay, so we have hue, saturation, and light coming from Munsell's hue, chroma, and value. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here and I'm going to sort of, we're not doing this like super technically, we're just going to use what we know about logic, light logic. We're going to put this color, which is, I have it as 8, 50, 50, but yours could be, you could pick a different color here. You could do, you know, you could do 24. And you can see how that changes the color around the circle. Okay, but I'm going to keep it with 8. And I'm going to assign that, that's basically our middle tone. I'm going to put it about here. Okay, then I'm going to move up 5 and put that color there. Okay, then I'm going to move up 5 more, put that color there. I'll move up 5 more, put that color there. And you can see that it's changing incrementally, right? And then it's getting much closer to the light now. So I'm going to move up 10. It's not a big difference. So let's do this. Let's add 10 here. So that's going to increase the white. So now it's a tint. So let's add 10. And then let's add 10. And then you can see the old circle still back there, still a little bit. And then I'm going to add 10. I'm going to add 10. Whoopsie. So then look at that. I've got a bit of a problem somewhere in there.
Professor,
Yeah.
I can't figure out how to merge my layers on an iPad.
Okay. Hold on one second.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just behind because now they're not merged. So when I paint bucket, it does the whole thing.
Oh no. Okay. So what are you? Do you have an Apple Pencil?
No,
You're just using your finger?
no, I have a stylus.
Okay. So hold the stylus onto the layer that you want to merge and hold it till it turns blue.
Okay, so
Okay.
is it
And then you should get like a little menu pop up, do you?
20-minute call?
No.
Okay, don't use your stylus then. Use your finger. Touch it with your finger. Do you get a little menu pop up?
No.
All right, hold on. Let me plug in my iPad.
I know because I can move the layers, but I can't figure out how to merge them.
Okay, hold on one second. Let me grab my cord.
I think that if you just tap on the layer, there will be an option that
there.
says merge
Yeah,
with an arrow down, and it will merge directly into the one below.
That focuses in the account.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that came up and it
I'll maybe-
oh, merge.
Yep.
But then how do I know which ones it's merging with?
it's gonna merge with the one, Gabrielle is right. I think that was Gabrielle.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
so like,
perfect.
if I have
Yay, I
this-
got it. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Gabrielle.
You can see all.
Of course.
and this, right? Then I would hit that and I'm gonna merge it down.
So it merges with the one right above, below it or whatever.
Right.
Below it, yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. The only thing you have to watch out for there is that, like, say I have, right, like say I have a layer here, and in that layer, right, like I paint bucket everything, right? Well, then if I put that over that, and then I merge it, it's gonna cover up the one below it, you see?
Thank you.
Yeah.
I was trying to figure that out last night, so this is very nice. Thank you. Thank you,
You're
thank
welcome.
you.
Yay. Okay. Resume share here. Okay, and new share, sketchbook, share. All right,
Chris, can you go back? And
so then what, sorry, yeah,
can you go back and redo the colors?
which part? Yes,
Just
sure, absolutely.
reading, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's see. All right. So basically all I was doing was when I was changing the numbers, right? So you have hue, saturation, and light. And so if you move in the diamond, you can see that the saturation and the light moves. And if you move in the circle, you can see the hue moves. Okay, that's because every hue has a number. It's 360 degrees. And so red right here is both 0 and 360. So I just had mine on 8 because I liked that color. I like red. It's always been one of my favorite colors. And then I just had this at 50. And then I had this at 50 because that's like the middle value, middle chroma for that color. Okay. And so I don't know what just happened there, but I'm going to put that in again. Okay. So I'm going to come in here. So I put everything's merged, right? So then I got my paint bucket. I have my tolerance set to 1. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to decide, okay, light is bending around this. The lightest part will be the top and light is going to bend around. So it's going to get darker as it goes around. And right now I'm not dealing with my darkest darks because I'm only at 50% saturation and 50% light. So wherever I can't remember where I was exactly, but I'm going to pick this one and I'm going to make that one 50-50. So that's like the number 5 on the value wheel, value scale. Then here, I'm going to add 10. And why not I think I discovered last time it worked better if I just added 10 each time on the saturation and the light. And so that's going to go there. So I'm going to add 10 here, add 10 there, put that in there. And I'm going to add 10, add 10. Okay, add 10. Boop. Uh-oh, I'm going to run out of numbers here. So I'm going to add 10. Now I'm just going to add, I have 2 more to do. So yeah, if we do 5 and 5, put that in there. And then let's see what happens if we do 100. It's probably just it's going to be pure white. Okay, so I think we want just a hair of color in there. So let's do 98 and 98. Okay. Does that help?
Yeah, that helps. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so I'm actually going to just grab the color picker. I'm going to go back. I'm going to repick that color. So I already knew it was at 50-50 here. Okay, so now what we're going to do is now we're going to go down 10. Down 10. So light logic, y'all, light logic is the way that light is bending and moving around the form. In this case, that form being, of course, the cylinder. And we are about to really get into value very soon. And it changes everything because it changes how we model dimensionality. Okay, so that we're going to leave our darkest color there at 30 saturation, 30 light. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go back up here. We're going to go back up to 40, back up to 40, because we're going to go down towards the reflected light because this is a cylindric form. And then we're going to go back again. Let's go. I don't think we should go to 50, 50. We're going to 45, 45. But sometimes this reflected light is almost the brightest part of a form's light logic or value. So down here where it's just a bit funky, then I'm just going to go in there and just going to hand fill that space in. Now, the reason it didn't get hit with the fill bucket is because I have the tolerance so low. And actually, I want that because I want to really control that. So now we have this. So if we then sort of, if we filled in the background now, we can really see how that top layer pops. If we take it off, then we can see that the top plane disappears because light and value are relative. So right now, if we removed that contour line there, it would disappear into the background. And so right now they look almost exactly the same, though they're not. If I take that background color, right, and I just adjust it a little bit, so it's at 0 saturation, 100% light. If I just adjust that here to 90% and 10% and fill it in, then boom, that pops. The reason that it pops is because now the background is a different value from the value in that top plane. All value is relative. You can leave that background white. I'm going to resume the recording. Okay, so let's leave the vanishing point where it is. Whee! Okay, and now we're going to do another one. We're going to do it so we can see through it. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with our, whoopsie, let's start with our square. Oh, that's not going to be enough space. All right, y'all, what we're going to have to do, I don't think I'm going to have enough space on mine. So I'm actually going to go here. Don't know why this matters, but I'm going to take that. And I'm just going to shrink it down. There we go. You know what? That doesn't help me at all. I'm just going to turn it off. Just going to turn it off later. Don't want you. There you go. I was like, I want to save my perspective work, but in the end, it's not going to save it. Okay, so let's keep that there, and we're just going to break every rule in the world. And we're just going to move our vanishing point over. Let's move it over to this side like that. So now, of course, if I turn this on, that doesn't really make sense. It would now be, that would now be 2-point perspective, which we would have to fix, but we're not going to worry about it. We're just going to move the vanishing point over. And then we're just going to go in here. I'm going to make sure I have a color you can see, and I'm going to make my square. Boop. I'm going to turn on my perspective tool. I'm going to drag back. Try. Oh, naughty. Back. 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 Okay. And then let's define the back edge. Boop. Okay.
I'm having an issue sketching on my hidden layer. Can I just like open up a new, like?
Yes, pardon me, make a new layer or make a new sketch, sure, whichever one you
Okay,
need.
perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, and then let's find the center. Okay, I'm going to change colors so it's a little easier to see. Probably not a green because that won't show up very well. But something like that will work fine. I'm going to go corner to corner. Now we're going to do almost all the same process, but we're just going to change up one thing. There's the old Union Jack. Scotland's having another call for independence, so it might not look like that anymore, which would be interesting. But for now, this is the old Union Jack. Okay. Now, we're going to get our circle. I'm going to do exactly the same thing, placing the circle in the center. And dropping it into place. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Look at that. Thanks, technology. She says that when it does it wrong. Of course, it's probably not the technology that did it wrong. It's probably me. There we go. Right, and then just like before, where it is flat, vertical axis, vertical axis. Didn't do a good job up here, did I, of the getting the square and the circle together. That's what we're going to get. And then we can just drag orthogonals down there. So let's go to the back space. Change colors. Then I can do my boop. Boop, like that. So now I know that my front circle and my back circle line up with one another. All right. So far, it's all the same. So far, it should all seem quite familiar from what we just did just a few minutes ago. Okay. Now, go ahead and make a new layer. Okay, and let's take this. Let's drag its opacity down. Okay, and we're going to focus on the planes on the outside that are going to be visible. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's make our new circle in the front because we're going to need that circle. Okay. Now, go ahead and make the back circle on another layer so later on we can erase bits of it if we don't need it. It just makes things easier later on. But I'm also going to change the opacity of that down for now because I don't really need it. It's just so that later on I have a nice solid circle back there that I can create an edge with. So here's my front circle, here's my back circle. Now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to make things easy for me. So I'm going to make myself a new layer and I'm going to do all of the planes on the left side that are going to be visible. I'm going to use the right tool for that. So here, that's going to be visible. Okay, now I know that this top edge is going to be visible. Let's see, where do I have my last place? Right there, it looks like I have my last place. Oh, you jerk. It won't go back. Oh, there we go. Had to yell at it. Okay. Now, I also have this here. It's going to go back there. Then I'm going to go ahead and take from this point here. I'm going to go to. I'm going to take from that point and I'm going to go to the back there. Boop. Okay. Now here, same thing. I'm going to find down here. I'm going to find the last place. Looks about there. Makes sense that it would be there. I'm going to pull my orthogonal back to there. So I basically have this. And so that I'm just going to go through. I'm going to put my planes in. And let's focus this time on having them smaller as they disappear around the top and bottom and larger in the center here. Now, the other thing that's happening there too, is what we also could call quantitative value, right? Like the more lines there are, the darker it's going to appear. And so the darker it appears is going to look sorry, it's going to look darker. Okay, doesn't make any sense. So the more lines there are, the darker it appears. So we can create value just by adding lines in here. And as long as they go back to the vanishing point, that will be fine. Of course, it's not what we're doing, but that makes sense. Quantitative lines create value because there's more lines and they take away more light. The only time that's opposite, right, is if you're working on a black piece of surface, digital or paper, and you're adding white material. Then the more white you add, the lighter it looks. Okay. So now, go back and turn this on. Let's drag it down though. We don't want it to be super dark because that's just so confusing. And then I'm going to make a new layer. And then on that new layer, I'm going to go ahead and reestablish my square. Okay. And then guess what we're going to do? We're going to be a bit naughty. I don't know why it means we're naughty when I do this, but I don't know. Just being naughty, we're dividing the space up. I don't know why that's naughty, but there you go. Okay, now we want to establish the thickness of the lip of the circle in the front. Its location, if we look at the vanishing point's over here, and so it's to the left. So that means technically the right lip will be smaller than the left lip. And to establish that, we're going to establish that by creating another circle on the inside that relates to another square. But we're going to do it with a measurable system. So what we're going to do is we're going to come down and I'm going to look at this distance here. I like that distance. It feels good. And I'm going to come down here and I'm going to follow that distance. Okay. And then visually that gives me the opportunity to then create another square. The other way I could do it is like what we did with the perspective where we divide the space, divide the space, divide the space. But what's nice about this right now is that like I don't have any reason why I can't decide on the space myself. Right? It's not part of a building. It's not proportionally related to a door, any of that stuff. So now there's my new square. Okay. Now, this isn't going to create like a huge ellipse or anything like that because we're in a 1-point perspective. But there will be probably ever so slight difference. But I don't know. I don't know. It might be about, it might just look the same. That makes sense. It makes sense why it would look the same because it's 1-point perspective. But that's how we're going to check to make sure that we are making sure that the lip is doing what it should do in terms of the perspective. Okay, so I'm going to go up. Here's this layer here. And above that layer, I'm going to make a new layer. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to draw that inner circle now that I just made into place. And then I'm going to go down. I'm going to turn this off. Could you have just guessed? Yes. But I wanted to show you how to do it with a measurable way. Now, let's think about the planes on the inside that we're going to be able to see. Okay. So let's start off with our perspective tool. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to say, okay, so are the planes that we're going to see on the inside, are they going to correlate to the outside edge or the inside edge? They're going to correlate to the inside edge here. And so that means that you can't just follow the other lines, but what you want to check, right, is that where you decide that they are, if you look, we can start with the same exact locations of things, but we're thinking about that increased thickness there. You see? Because we're coming off of that inner circle now. And look, they're still lighting up, but we're doing it the right way to make sure that we know where things are supposed to be. And they should line up, right? The only difference is that we've kind of moved a little bit over, but they're going to line up in some places visually, you see, which is a sign that we're in the 1-point perspective system. So now if I turn this off, I have something like this. So like we said on the outside, let's make sure that our planes, as they curve, let's get them a bit smaller. And then as they go towards the middle, let's let them get larger. And then let's let them get smaller again. Okay. So I'm going to go back to that back circle back there. I'm going to erase this because I don't need this. I think I'm going to erase it. Oh no, I'm not. I'm going to turn that off. Why would you? Oh, I need to be on that layer, that's why. Isn't that nice? Thanks, computer. Okay. So now I just want to make sure that I've got connecting lines everywhere. Okay. Then once everything is connected, then I'm going to go to my layers and I'm going to merge all that together. Okay. It's okay, Ella. Resume recording. Okay, So we just finished this one. So now we're going to do a 1-point perspective cup with a handle. Okay. Now, typically when we do like a handle, we enter into 2-point perspective, but we're going to manipulate it so we don't have to. So I'm going to turn all this off. Okay. And I'm going to make sure the recording's going, and it is. Okay. So as always, everyone with the recording going, just so that you're aware that we are recording now. All right, so go over there. Okay, so we're gonna go 1 point. Oh yeah, 1 point. Yeah, and then let's kind of move it through here, about there. Now, one of the things I've mentioned in the past that hasn't really been a huge issue, but does start to come up, especially with ellipses and ovals and things, is that there really is a distance in which the perspective will remain undistorted. And so it really is only quite a small window. It's about 60% of the space in which the perspective will not become dynamically distorted. And so even if you do it correct, it might still end up distorted if you work on if you were working out here or even down here. So we're going to focus within this sort of 60% area. I don't know if it's really 60%. I'm just going to say it is, okay? But that's generally this idea, right? That they give as a 60% sort of number. But what are numbers but ideas? So I'm just going to delete this layer I just made here. Okay. So go ahead, let's use our square tool and let's kind of, pay attention here. You could even, if you need a marker, you could even draw your horizon line in so that you know where it is, okay? And so then when I turn off the perspectives tool, it's still there. So I'm gonna use my square tool and I'm going to go ahead and put in kind of this time I'm gonna do a rectangle. I'm not gonna do a square. Okay. I'm gonna turn on my perspective tool and I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to do my orthogonals. Okay, now I'm making a cup. Okay, now we're going to put the handle on the right side, but we're not going to worry about the handle right now. We're just looking at making a cup. So what we're going to do is we're going to come down. We're going to think about sort of what the proportional relationships of a cup might be. I think about there looks pretty good. Why do I think that? I don't know. I've held a lot of cups. I'm basing that off of my perception of a cup. Now, a cup can be anything, right? It doesn't even have to have a handle, but our cup's can have a handle. All right, easy peasy. Now, we're going to focus on the top and the bottom. So we're going to find the center here using the right tool. Going to find the center. Boop. 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 Okay. And I'm going to find the center up here. Boop. Boop. So then I can literally now draw a vertical line through that, and now I have a vertical axis, okay? Now here, I want a horizontal. There I want a horizontal. So it starts to look like Duchamp's chocolate grinder from The Bride Stripped Bare, her bachelor's. Then when we add this, we have the Union Jack. Union Jack. So this is when it's annoying because it's almost like, well, if I could pick it up and I look at it, I could then see it from multiple points. And there are programs that you can do that. But this is more like realistic drawing on paper because you can't do that on a piece of paper, right? So this is going to be a bit more complicated. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new layer. All right. And I'm going to zoom in so I can see. I think I have to turn this off to get this to come up. I'm going to put it so that it's easy for you all to see. Okay. Now, I'm now going to start building my ellipse on the bottom. So I'm going to go with a new layer. And I'm going to go with a different color because that just helps me keep track of things. Here we go. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go diagonal here, diagonal here, diagonal there, diagonal there. Okay. Now, what did I say earlier about when we found the outside edges of the circle in the square? I told you that you could see a certain location. Does anybody remember what it was? So what I'm going to do is basically I'm going to divide this in half. Okay. Now, once I've found one, again, it's going to be good and easy, really. I'm going to come down. I'm going to turn my perspective grid on. I'm going to come down till I hit that line. And I'm going to come over till I hit that line. And I'm going to come up till I hit that line. And then I'm going to come over till I hit that line. True or false? False. Circles and squares come to points. Yes or no?
No.
Correct. Good. They're going to come to flat edges, right? So we're going to figure out how to define those flat edges. Okay. And so this is we're just going to do a bit of just good old fashioned logical guessing. I'm going to make my first horizontal there. And I can judge that distance, okay? And the one below it is just going to be just a little bit bigger. So there's my horizontal flat moment there and there. I want the same thing on this side, okay? And I want it to read about the same thickness. So I'm just going to use my perception of space there. And then this side is going to be a bit smaller there. So now I have my next flat part there. And I have my next flat part there. Okay, so this is where if you're on an iPad, things are easier. And if you're on a desktop, things are harder. All right. What we're going to do is we're going to draw our ellipse in there. But there's not a really good ellipse tool on the desktop version. All right. What we do have is a predictive stroke. If you're on the app like an iPad, you could just draw an ellipse. Okay. If you're on the desktop, you can't. Not really. It's too hard with the trackpad or a mouse, I think. So we're going to do it in sections. So do you see this little thing here? It's like a good strong curve and then a broken curve. We're going to try that out. Okay. And what we need is we need an ellipse that's going to come. I'm just going to put my cursor there on the outside of that flat section. I'm just going to draw like that. And you see it corrects it. So then I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to draw. I want it to come from that flat part through that point to that flat part, and it corrects it. Do you see?
Sorry, I'm a little bit behind. I got a little bit lost.
Okay, where'd you get lost at?
Okay, so I divided this bottom rectangle into like a cross, and I was making the diamond shape.
Tell me when. Here?
Yeah.
Okay. So those lines are going to come, right? They're going to come from this point. Oh, but actually, you know what? I'm not going to draw anything because then I can't. I think I just lost all my work. Yeah, I just lost all my work. Okay, that's okay. No worries. Then we can do it together again. Okay, so we got to this point, right? And so then what I said that we should do is then we're going to come through and we're just going to say what is halfway through this space. And so then I'm just going to go what I think is halfway. So I'm going to go right here. Okay. And then now I have that point. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes.
Okay, then I'm going to go back to my perspective tool. And now I'm going to draw the next square. And so it's going to come from that point and it's going to come down and intersect with that cross-section line. And then horizontal line over to that cross-section line. Orthogonal back to that cross-section line. Horizontal over. Does that look good? Make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I was trying to do the rectangle and it wasn't working, or the square.
Okay, but now you're good.
Yeah, because I wasn't using the perspective tool. That's where I wrong.
Yeah. I let that help me as much as I possibly can. So then the next step is the curve. So they're going to come. Oh wait, sorry. Then the next step is the division of the space for the cross. So horizontal axis, smaller on the top. It's closer to you on the bottom, so larger on the bottom. Larger on the left. Smaller on the right. That's probably a bit dynamic, but it's fine. So now I have my flat section here of my circle, my flat section there of my circle, my flat section there of my circle, and my flat section there of my circle. That was a lot to get out of my mouth. All right, so now I'm going to do a curve, and I can do it piece by piece. I'm going to use the predictive curve stroke, y'all, on the desktop app. On the Apple or Surface, anything with a tablet, I would actually just draw it personally. So I'm going to use predictive stroke. I'm going to come around there. No, that's too square. I need to come out and curve it. And you'll see and feel when it's about right. There we go. That's a bit better, Vaughn. There we go. So yesterday I did this by hand. I didn't use the predictive stroke. And I said to my students, I really love it because you get to see me fail a lot. And you do. But the predictive stroke is actually quite helpful. And I want to show everyone how to use it. So I'm going to drag and it needs to come through there and then come up to touch there. It's a bit off. We can see it's a bit off over there. So I'm going to do it again. So I'm going to come. There we go. Nope. Just keep doing it until you find it. So you still get to see me fail. There we go. That's better. And then this one, it's always easier to remember it's always easier to pull down.
Do we use the oval tool on the iPad?
I find that tool as being unable to get an ellipse into a rectangle.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time with it, but I don't see that predictive
Yeah, you
curve.
you're gonna have to do on, oh, you know what, I'll do it so that you can see me do it and struggle with you. What-
Okay.
I'll tell you,
what
I'll
I'm-
tell you where
what-
it is,
The
Laura.
predictive stroke is the wavy line next to the one where you do the line, the boxes.
Oh, it looks different. The wavy line. The wavy line next to the circle square one, between the landscape and the circle square.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It is the S shape, yeah.
S shape.
You're all
Perfect.
so nice. I was gonna show you how to do it without that.
Well, thanks, guys.
Yeah, you just saved
Thanks,
Laura.
classmates.
Asshole. I didn't know that was a feature in that one, so that's good. Whew. Okay, if you can't see me right now, I'm sweating, okay? But that's our goal. Not sweating.
Well, you're in Florida.
Yeah.
I noticed you always sweat when you're in Florida. It's good for detoxing.
Yes, it is.
And I was noticing your ceiling fan. That is in every room in Florida.
Yes, this bedroom that I'm in, that's my mom's like extra, it's the spare room in her little condo. It's like 3/4 the size of my apartment, So Lexi says, I found it easier to use the predictive stroke to make the whole circle, making sure you hit the flat points. Then you can move the circle and adjust the size afterwards to make it 100% correct. I think that's a great tip.
I just found it a lot easier to make sure that it like fit the space better if you just draw the whole circle, and then it gives you, usually most of the time it gives you something pretty close, and then if you just move the tool around, as long as it's on a separate layer, you can move the circle and it's a lot easier to adjust from there.
Perfect. So you're like distorting it into the spot. I like that, but y'all, I also want you to start like practicing drawing ellipses. Okay, and the trick to drawing ellipses with the trackpad is these sort of multiple layers until you find the right shape. The tip to drawing it with the Apple Pencil or the Surface Pencil, or whatever you're using, is to feel the ellipse with as much of your arm as you can. And always remember, when you pull down, it's going to be more symmetrical than when you push up. So sometimes it's easier to pull down and then pull down, you see. But yeah, y'all, any tool you got, go for it. Okay, so then now we have to do the ellipse on the top. What fun. Okay. So we could copy it and paste it and move it up and adjust it, but I actually want you to go through a little bit of struggle with me and try to draw it again. So I'm going to make a new layer, and then what I'm going to do is I'm now going to draw my lines up. Oh, wrong tool. Just going to draw up from my flat points. And then once I've drawn up from my flat points, I'm now going to draw up from those corner points there. 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 And then one of the things is that, like, you know, the more points that you pull straight up, the more guide you have to draw that ellipse. And the more that can help you when you try to freehand it in to that spot. That also can get a bit confusing, but it can also be helpful. So I'm going to pull my first shape there. And then through here. Try from this point here. There we go. It's pretty flat up there, you see? And then from here, it's going to come up and go around. And here it's going to go back. Whoops. This is when I wish I was on my Apple, on my iPad. I think I would. But I like struggling. I want you to see, I do. I like when my students get to see me struggle. And, you know, it's definitely something I know, you know, sometimes students don't like to, like, you know, they just want me to stay really on task and on point, which is good. Of course you do. But, you know, I like to talk about like how, you know, what does it mean for me at 44 to take up dancing? You know, it means I just fail all the time. And I have to fail in front of a group of people. And they're all in their 20s. They're all amazing. Right. And then I get, I just dance and I just like crash and fall and hurt myself. And people say, you know, after 3 years, you're getting better. You know. So that's just the nature of learning is failure. And I think as teachers, I just think that the college should require every teacher to be doing something outside of teaching that they just are going to be dreadful at. Maybe because most of them are parents, maybe they all get failing, they get to fail the whole time. I'm not a parent, so I don't know. I'm sure it's incredibly difficult to be a parent. So there you see, I'm a bit bumpy up there, but I'm going to correct it. So, because what I'm going to do is this. Now I'm ready. I'm going to merge that layer with that layer. And I can turn that off. Okay. And now I'm going to make a new layer. And I'm going to just basically try to draw my ellipse in here with one stroke as much as I can. Okay, and then I'm gonna do what Lexi said. I'm gonna then click on this and I'm gonna drag it out until it matches everywhere. Brilliant bit of advice that. Notice how different the ellipses on the bottom and top look to one another. So I'm going to make another layer, do the same thing, predictive stroke. I'm going to try to draw my ellipse by hand as accurately as I can. So there we go. Now that looks funky, but that is pretty correct. What's happening, of course, is that the perspective is doing that distortion. And so that's where, y'all, that's where, like, again, if you have yourself, if you move too far outside of the area, you get more and more distortion. So now if I turn this on, I can actually, I don't even need to turn that on. I can leave it off and I can just go from this point, hopefully from that point, I'll make a new layer. From that point, I can just go straight down to a point here. Then a point over here. Pretty dynamic on the bottom, but again, that's the perspective. And I can erase the inside. Oh, I've still got the perspective tool on. That's probably not quite entirely right. I think it needs to come down further. This looks a little bit out of scope, more perhaps in there. There we go. I think this is a bit extreme. And that's okay. It's okay. It's okay to need some little bit of cleaning up, but I think that looks a bit better there. Let's clean this up over there. That's better. You know, when I was younger and I used to teach drawing, I would sweat so much because I always thought students wanted, I had to do it right every time. And now that I'm older, I just think, I think as a student, I mean, I feel like you've got confidence in me, and I want you to have that confidence, of course. But I think also it's like, it's kind of nice to see, like, she's struggling a bit too. I personally think that's good as a teacher. My teachers weren't like that, of course, because it was just a different generation of teachers. They weren't going to let you see that they weren't superior, right? Okay, now we can only really put the handle on one place for it to be in a 1-point perspective. Okay. And that's, once we start putting it into different places, it starts to become 2-point perspective because it's going to need lines that shoot back. So let's see, where can we put the handle? Why don't we look and say, can we put the handle here? Can we make can we do this? And we would need a rectangle. Let's see, if we put this here, is that going to make sense? Let's see. We could do that, but it would feel a lot more real if this bottom edge was going that way. So I don't think we should put it there. I think we should find another place to put it. I think it's really the only place it can go. Make a new layer, which is out here on the side. which looks a bit funky with our edge down here, but that's okay. You're all like, what the hell is she doing? I'm just fighting myself, really. All right. So we can definitely do multiple planes through here for the curve. Everywhere where you see kind of like a part of the curve, you can put in a plane. And then kind of as they get closer over here, let them get smaller. Okay. And that will help to give the roundness to the form, do you see? Now it starts looking more believable because now it's starting to get that roundness to it. Okay. Last little bit here, are you ready? Which is just going to be, we need to decipher, how do we build this thing? Okay. And so then to decipher that, what we really need is to just figure out, all right, so inside here, where does that go? So just two rectangles, just like that. Then if I turn on my perspective tool, I can say, well, am I going to see any of the inside of that? Oh, look, I am. Am I going to see any of the top of this? Oh, yeah, look, I am. So then I'm just going to build that rectangle just like we've built other rectangles. Look at that.
I really don't like how the bottom of my cup turned out. It looks really weird.
Sure, so does mine. And the reason that does that, well, first of all, we freehanded it. But second of all, the reason that we've done that is because the amount of space we're working in. We're moving downwards quite a bit here. You see how the oval looks more flat up top?
Yeah, mine looks super flat.
Okay, that's because it's close to the horizon line.
It is.
Right, but the bottom isn't.
Right.
And as a result, it becomes more dynamic.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Now, the reality is that this might be so dynamic that it actually is a 3-point perspective. But obviously we're not there yet. Okay. But if it was a 3-point perspective, if our horizon line was up here, then we would probably see a little bit here, perhaps not as dynamically. A little bit here, though, these verticals would become diagonals. But we're not quite there, yeah? We're not quite at that point. And the reason that looks a bit silly by that, by the way, is because it needs to be way down here. And that would be a little less steep, you see. So the reason that there's some distortion there is because what's happening is the proximity of these elements to the horizon line, that's what's happening.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I agree. Mine looks a bit funky too. Okay, totally, 100%. Okay. For your homework, you're going to make a digital drawing. Try to take pictures of the layers, please. you know, I'd like to see some layers like this included on your digital drawing, just like you did with the 1-point perspective. You're going to do dissected layers, contour layers, and then I want you to have some fun and do some fill-in. You're going to do 3 cylinders in 1 pictorial space. So you have to then decide, like, okay, how big are they going to be? Where are they going to go? Where will my vanishing point be? You get to decide all of that. You get to decide what colors you use. Okay, one can be solid, one can be see-through. Okay, one of them has to have a handle, but it's up to you what you do with that. Okay, just for fun. Now, if you are struggling with doing it digitally and you want to do it by hand with paper and a ruler, you can do that too. Okay. So go ahead and take a screenshot.
Sorry, Professor, did you say we could do this with pen and paper?
If for your homework, if you prefer to, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but then you would have to make sure, you know, I would do all of my dissectional like drawing with pencil. And then I would do my contour layer with a pen and erase my pencil. And then you could just shade it in with a pencil if you want, or you could shade it in with a pen, or you could do marker, or whatever. Honestly, if you do it with paper and pencil, I don't even need you to add color to it, okay?
Should we add
Should you add what?
the mug we just drew to the discussion board?
Yeah, just upload it, yeah. I just need to see some work from you today. You know, you'll notice that I don't always have a chance to go through and comment and everything, but I'm really, it's just like in the classroom where I'd walk around the room and I would just see that you were drawing. That's what I'm trying to do. And then the other day I did go through and comment on some. I'm really only going to do that if I really see problems, yeah. I'm trying to just keep a handle on where you are in terms of your understanding as a class, okay? Also, it's part of your attendance. And, you know, if you, I do want you to think about the fact that like your attendance is part of the way that I'm trying to give you a higher grade. You know, every one of those drawings is 10 points. So if we do 10 of them, that's 100 points. That's equal to 1 drawing that you might miss.
And when were these due today? All the drawings we did today?
Just get what you did in class today uploaded by like midnight. I think that's the timestamp. Celeste, upload whatever you have. You don't need to finish it.
Okay.
It's just like I'm just trying to track like your progress, and I'm just trying to see that you're participating, and I want to catch any major problems you might be having, okay? So it's okay if it's not finished. This is what I'm saying. Okay, everybody. Our last little bit, we're gonna have some fun here. Maybe, I don't know. I'm gonna turn all this stuff off. Okay, now stop working on your cylinders because I'm going to introduce some new information to you. We're going to turn on the 2-point perspective tool. Finally, 2-point, yay! Okay. So I have a new layer. And I'm just going to move this up here. And it just locks itself into place. I don't care on your page where you have it, as long as it's not right in the middle. That makes things confusing. Okay, then I'm going to lock it. So the big rule about 1-point perspective, vertical lines remain vertical, horizontal lines remain horizontal, orthogonals are orthogonals. The big rule with 2-point perspective is vertical lines remain vertical, everything else is an orthogonal. Okay. You will on occasion get a vertical line excuse me, you will on occasion get a horizontal line that is horizontal, but that's only when it matches the horizon line. With a 1-point perspective, we always start with a flat plane facing us or a plane facing us. It doesn't have to be flat, I suppose. But it's always a plane facing us. With a 2-point perspective, there's always a corner. So go ahead and just create a corner. Now, the location of that corner to the vanishing points dictates the length of different sides and dictates the trajectory of sides. So that's going to go back there. This will go back, excuse me. This will go back there. This will go over there. This will go over there. Now the left side is further away from the vanishing point than the right side, which is closer to that vanishing point. So that means that this side will be longer. So let's just go ahead and put a line there. And then it's going to create a side that's moving back through space this way. Now let's make a line here on the shorter side. And that's going to go this way. And then here, that's going to go this way and come in contact there. But I'm going to drag it down there so you can see. Now where that all intersects is right here. I'm going to draw right up. Yes, thank you, Celeste. It's recording. So if we make a new layer and we just retrace all that, let's make this opaque. We're just going to trace the bits that we're going to see on the tops and the sides. We're not going to trace on the inside. I'm going to turn that off. Now we have this. Isn't that a beautiful thing? I don't know. It's not really, it's just a box. Oh, blimey. There we go. Could be a fox in the box. Could be full of rocks. Might be full of locks. Anyone? Anyone? Anyone else got an idea what's in there?
Socks.
Oh, good. Smocks. Thank you for what was it?
Chalk, as in like chalkboard chalk.
Oh, nice. A box of chalks. Nice. Thanks, everyone. Okay, now this thing is now sitting there in space. It's below the horizon line, so we can see the top of it. We can see the left side is longer than the right side because the left side is further away from the left vanishing point. Let's do one up in the sky. Okay, I'm going to go back to this layer. I'm going to do one up in the sky here. I need to use a pen. I'll do a different color. Now, if I place it closer the side to the center of the space, then that's going to, possibly affect the length of my sides. So that's going to go there. 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 I actually placed it even further away. I meant to place it more in the center. Oh. So let's make this super long. Super long. Okay. Then this point goes to that. No, it doesn't. This point goes to that one. This point goes to that one. Let's make it super long but super thin here. That goes to the left. That goes to the left. And then we have an intersection back there.
For some reason, I don't know if it's just my lines, like, but they're not lining up at all.
Do you have the perspective tool on?
I do this time, yeah.
Okay. If you
I
zoom
think I
in
might
on
have
them,
missed.
yeah, did you miss something when you zoom in? Did you miss a corner or something, you know? Are you on the app?
Yeah.
Yeah, I find it hard on the app, especially when things are really small, to really get a corner to line up.
No, but like, look.
Okay, hold on.